Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk about the accuracy of this 7.5-inch 9mm AR. Okay, so this one is from Palmetto. It's the PX-9. This one has like close to like 12,000 rounds on it. Okay, I have talked about this in the past. I have put in an 8-ounce buffer weight in here, which softens the cycling action. Before I did that, I used to break hammer pins, and I had issues like that. But ever since I put the 8-ounce buffer weight, I have not really had any problems with things breaking. Now, it's 7.5 inches, which means the barrel stops here. If you look over here, the purpose of this linear comp is because I found that a lot of times when I'm training with people, particularly women, and this is a great gun for training women on because it is less front heavy, right? If I give them a 16-inch barrel, the gun tends to be more, more front heavy, whereas they really like shooting the shorter ones, the AR pistols. But what I found is that it was a little too short, right? Because I find that the 10.5 ones tend to be kind of perfect. Takes away, pulls back on the weight that's out front, but long enough so that they don't accidentally run their hands near the muzzle. So a lot of times when I was watching women shoot this, and guys too, I would find that their hands would start to slide a little bit forward. Made me really nervous, and that's the purpose of this linear comp. Okay, so it's basically there as a safety precaution. But like I said, this has about 12,000 rounds on it. I'm sure I've done an accuracy test in the past. I don't remember. There might be a video floating around out there. But what I did do today, which I know I had not done in the past with this rifle, the 7.5-inch 9mm AR, is I took it out to 150 yards. So at 100, first of all, I shot a whole bunch of other groups over here at about 100 yards. Okay, now it is a little bit windy today. You can see the wind ribbons. It is a little bit windy, so 9mm, because it's going slower, the wind does tend to have a little bit more effect on the bullet. But basically, I was coming in at 100 yards at around somewhere between 4 and 5 inches at 100 yards most of my shots. But then I went out to 150 yards, and basically I think the wind died down, the stars kind of lined up, and at 150 yards I got a total group of 4 3/4 inches. So that's the shots here without the circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a 5-shot group. Okay. Now, if I discount that one, because I'm pretty sure I pulled that one a little bit. Basically, I have like a 3.5-inch group, right? But I'm gonna include all 5 shots for this grouping. We're gonna say it's 4 3/4 inches at 150 yards. So if you the math is right, if you divide it by 1.5, that gives you your accuracy at 100 yards. Which brings it down to 3.19. So I'm just going to round up to 3.25 MOA at 100 yards. Okay, so this rifle over here, it's about 3.25 MOA. I'm really happy with that. Now, if you notice over here, when I shot it, when I was shooting it at the 100 yards, I was a little bit to the right over here. I didn't know if that was the wind pushing me. What I did is when I went out to 150 yards, I saw that they were still going a little bit to the right, so I adjusted, I think, 3 clicks to the left, and it centered it up. Okay, and that's how I got this 4 3/4 inch group at 150, 3.19 MOA. Okay, so I think that's very decent accuracy for a 9mm in a 7.5-inch barrel. So I wanted to kind of put that out there. Now, a lot of times people ask me, well, what, does, aside from training women, which is an excellent purpose for this rifle, right, and men too, but for women just because it's less front heavy, is there a self-defense purpose to this rifle? Can be used for self-defense. Well, obviously you can use any gun for self-defense, but is there a reason why you would want to use this versus a 5.56 and 7.5? So if you let's say that you have decided that your barrel length is going to be 7.5, okay, that's not what I recommend, but let's say you've decided that for whatever reason, it needs to be 7.5 inches barrel length. The issue that I find is with the 5.56, it's extremely loud. Okay, especially indoors, it's going to be crazy because you're going to have the sound echoing back on you. So it's extremely loud, and there's a lot of muzzle flash. The muzzle flash with the 5.56 and the 5.56 barrel is tremendous, even with a linear comp in the front. I've done videos where I'm shooting that in low light conditions, and you know, it basically looks like there's lightning going on. Okay, so if you need to be at 7.5 inches, the 9mm is very feasible in the sense that it is not extremely loud. Okay, and also you don't get that muzzle flash, right? And I've done night videos where I'm actually shooting these two side by side. So you eliminate those two issues. You eliminate the muzzle flash, you eliminate the excess loudness. Now, what are you giving up? What are you giving up, right? So the first thing that you're giving up is about 230 foot-pounds of energy, right? Because when I ran this through the chronograph, I did a separate video on this. The 7.5 inch barrel gets about 405 foot-pounds, okay, of energy. Let's just say 400 foot-pounds. The 10 inch got something like 430, and the 16 inch got something like 460. Okay, so, and we're talking energy there. So, you know, normally when we're talking about 9mm, we're talking about it out of like a 4-inch handgun. So 9mm usually comes in somewhere around 350, 360. So because of the longer barrel, we're up to about 400 foot-pounds, which is like a 40 cal now, right, in terms of power. If I was shooting a 5.56 and 7.5 inches, now normally when we're shooting this 5.56, let's say if we're shooting it at a 16-inch barrel, we're getting something like 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, right? 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, maybe 1,200, somewhere around there. But you know, depends on your ammunition. So 1,100 to 1,200 foot-pounds of energy. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's closer to 1,200. If you're shooting Tula, it's 1,100. But when I tested the ammunition out in a 5.56 and a 7.5 inch barrel, it pretty much got cut almost exactly in half. So when I tested the 5.56 and the 7.5, I'm getting about 630 foot-pounds of energy. Okay, so the question now becomes, okay, so when you go from let's say from 9mm up to 5.56, the way I see it, you're only gaining an additional 230 foot-pounds of energy, right? You're going from, you know, 400 foot-pounds of energy, which I think is very respectable for a handgun, right, in a self-defense capacity against two-legged predators, right? You're going up to versus a 5.56, which is about 630. Now basically that's like at a 357 level, right? So I mean, I think that personally I think that the extra energy that you get does not justify the extra loudness and the muzzle flash. Okay, so and here's the thing, when you have a 5.56 in a you know, in a 7.5 inch barrel, you don't get the benefit of that little 22, you know, going at like 3,000 feet per second, right? Where it does like damage to surrounding tissue. So you're losing that, right? So in either case, all you're doing is pretty much punching little holes. Okay, so for that reason, if you have to be at 7.5 inches, which I, you know, in a home defense situation, I think I mean I just prefer a standard 16-inch. Where I think this really becomes useful is inside of a car, right? So if you're inside of a car, yeah, the shorter barrel can actually be very useful. So that's where I think these 7.5 inch barrels are useful, especially if you collapse it, okay, and if you put it in a single point sling inside of a trench coat, you know, during riot season, right? So now you can, you know, people don't know that you got, you know, you got a respectable firearm, right? Because to me, pistols are basically a backup gun. You now have a respectable firearm that you can shoot to like 150 yards and get, you know, 3 1/4 MOA. Okay. Now, here's the thing: the place where you lose, where the 5.56 and 7.5, I think excels is if you decide that, hey, you need to be at 7.5 inches because again you're in and out of a car, right? If you decide that you need to be at 7.5 inches, but there's a possibility that you might be shooting all the way out to, let's say, 500 yards, definitely 5.56, okay? Because with the 9mm, even in the 6-inch barrel, I've had lots of difficulty trying to get out to 300 yards. I've gotten there, I've made hits, they're pretty wide, and the wind tends to move the 9mm around a lot. With the 7.5 inch 5.56, I believe the last time I did it, I got a 7-inch group at 300 yards. Okay, so definitely, excellent group at 300 yards, and that will take you out to 400 yards, and you can definitely do good, at least very good suppression fire all the way out to 500 yards. Okay, so that's where I think the 5.56 and 7.5 beats out the 9mm in 7.5. Where if you have to be at 7.5 inches, you got the ability to work in that 300 to 500 yard range with that. Okay, whereas with the 9mm AR, you're going to be working like from zero distance, kind of like max 150 yards. You can get out to 200 yards. I've done videos where I'm shooting 200 yards, but the groups really start to open up, but at 150 yards, no problem. 3.25 MOA, I'm plenty happy with that. So, they're my thoughts on that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop some comments below, and I'll talk to you all soon.